Welcome to another LINKora project video. Today's topic of discussion is a bit more sensitive, so I do have to put up a warning. I'm going to be talking about topics such as suicide and depression. So if this is a sensitive topic for you, please exercise caution, and at any time feel free to just stop watching the video. So a question that I've had, and I know a lot of other people have, in terms of mental health is not necessarily how to help yourself, but how to help other people, especially if you have a friend or a loved one who is going through depression. So I basically looked into it, and this information that I'm presenting in the video is the information that I have found. So one really important thing is to not expect anything in return. So go in with the mentality that you're there to unconditionally help them for as long as they need it. So even if someone is not expressing gratitude, don't feel like you're unappreciated. Like your efforts are appreciated, even though if someone might not verbalize it. And also, if you're sending a message and you're not getting a response, and you feel like you're being ignored, just one thing to keep in mind for people who are going through depression is if you're going through a really deep depressive episode, it's really hard to do anything, like to get dressed, wake up in the morning, and even like formulate a text response. So maybe they just don't have enough energy to respond to your message. So just make sure to be considerate of that if you're in a situation where someone's just not responding. So if you notice someone is going through a rough patch, they're acting differently, then just maybe ask them about it. So say, hey, is everything all right? Is there anything you want to talk about? And if someone does confide like their feelings and emotions or what they've been going through, just be there and like really try to validate and really sympathize with them. So just say, hey, I'm really sorry to hear that. Is there anything I can do to help? And even if they don't want to talk about it, just let them know that you're always there to lend a listening ear. And then so in terms of helping someone, yeah, that could be offering the emotional support, but it can also be other forms of support as well. So if you've noticed like they're struggling with their physical tasks, maybe you can offer to help them out doing something such as getting groceries for them. Also, another thing to consider when talking to someone with depression is what not to say. So some things would include saying things like, oh, other people have it worse than you. Saying that really invalidates the struggle that they're going through. And although you might be trying to instill a sense of perspective, it's really not helpful. And you really don't want to make assumptions about what they're going through. Also saying things like, oh, cheer up, think positive thoughts, be happy. This is not really helpful because if it were that easy, then people probably wouldn't have depression. The person probably already tried to be positive and it probably didn't work. The next thing to do is really encourage them to seek professional help. And if, let's say, it's really daunting for them to seek out a mental health professional, such as a psychologist or a psychiatrist, one thing you could start them off is by encouraging them to see a doctor. And there's two good reasons for this. One is that some depression is actually induced by medical reasons. So it could be a medication someone is taking, or like some sort of deficiency, or some sort of underlying medical condition. So by going to a doctor, the doctor could diagnose these underlying causes and that could deal with the root of the problem. Also, doctors may refer them to a psychiatrist or a psychologist. And because it's a professional opinion, it holds a lot more weight and could really help push the person get the professional help that they need. And also, especially in some cultures, such as like Asian cultures, or even just personally, some people might not really buy into the idea of therapy or psychology or psychiatry. So having a professional opinion can help address with that. So once someone is looking for a therapist, you can definitely help them out. So you can help them look for therapists in your area. You can also help them book like the first appointment if it's a struggle for them, as well as brainstorm questions and things to talk about at their first appointment. And then also, once they start getting therapy, it's so important to push them to continue. Because sometimes when people are getting better, they think, oh, I don't need this anymore. I can just stop going to therapy. But then this is really dangerous because they can regress back to their old depressive state, or even worse. When some people get lifted out of a deep depression, they're more likely to act on suicidal thoughts. And yeah, that's just because they have more energy and the better ability to act on suicidal thoughts compared to when they were in a deep depressive state. So if someone, is at risk of committing suicide, then immediately dial 911 or the local emergency number. If you are in the US, you can also dial or text 988, which is a suicide prevention helpline. And you can also find other helplines on findahelpline.com, and you can search for different helplines depending on your region or depending on specific topics. And the last thing I would like to bring up is self-care, because when you're trying to help someone who's going through depression, it could be a huge burden on you, and it could definitely lead to a lot of burnout. So one thing to consider is setting your own boundaries. So make sure to be clear and lay out to that person, hey, I won't be able to respond within these times, or like when I'm at school or at work, I won't be able to respond to you. Also, you can join support groups yourself, and you can talk to other people who are also supporting loved ones who are going through depression. And you can also even confide in another friend, just confide your emotions or confess what you're going through. And then you can also really get that person's family members and friends also involved so that they have a whole supportive network. And then also make sure to take the time for self-care because obviously you're important. And if you are burnt out, if you're stressed and exhausted, you're not going to be able to help the person out, because if you can't even help yourself, how can you help someone else?
If at any point it becomes too much for you, it's okay to take a step back. Make sure to let the person know that you're not in the right mental space at the moment to help them out, and try to find someone else who has the ability to support them.
So lastly, if you or anyone you know would benefit from talking to someone, I have linked in our description. The LINKora project is starting a LINKora peer connections program in which you could talk to a peer. You can basically talk about how you're doing, or you can talk about how you're feeling. And then basically it's just a way to offer non-judgmental, confidential support. So thank you for watching this video, and make sure to check out the links in the descriptions as well as the resources.